Good evening. The special meeting of the City Commission for Thursday, 16 May 2024 will come to order. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in silencing your cell phones. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Cleveland.
Here.
Vice Mayor Perine.
Here.
Commissioner Hartman.
Here.
Commissioner Martin.
Here.
Commissioner McGurk.
Here.
Thank you.
We're here on our second of 4 meetings to discuss and narrow down our selection for the next city manager. If there are any citizens who wish to speak on this topic, please approach the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to address the commission on this topic at this time. Again, it's a monologue, not dialogue, and we're anxious to hear from you. Anybody, public participation is now open.
Hello, Chip Weston, 411 Hannah Jean Circle. And I spoke with 2 friends in Detroit, and they spoke very highly of the city of Royal Oak and of the commission and the city manager there. And I just thought that I would pass that along. That's the only information I have to add to this, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Chip. Anyone else? Seeing none, public participation is now closed. Whoop, okay.
Good
Hi,
evening.
Robbie.
Robbie Gibson Minor, 2839 South Asiano Court, New Smyrna Beach. And I'm here representing the New Smyrna Beach Residents Coalition this evening. First of all, even though he isn't here this evening, we would like to extend our thanks to Khalid for his decades of service to New Smyrna Beach and always being so accessible and present in the community. And he just has been an asset, I think, for many. And the State of the City address, when he received a standing ovation, I think that rather speaks for itself. A few weeks ago, I sent to you a set of criteria for city manager that the coalition, the Resiliency and Sustainability Committee, the leadership group, and the executive committee had developed. And since that time, we narrowed it down to 5 what we thought were the most critical criteria. And we sent out a survey, online survey, on our website. And from a scale of 1 to 5, we asked people to rate the 5 most important and 1 not at all important. And the big spread was 4.8 to 5. So there really was no statistical significance, or if you look at margin of error. So the 293 people who responded seemed to think these were important. And as you are doing this rigorous search, which is so thorough and in-depth, and getting to know the candidates, we again hope that some of these resonate with you. 1, just overall leadership experience and knowledge and proven results. Knowledge of and experience in dealing with environmental issues, especially those facing coastal cities as climate change, warming happens. Understands the importance of historic preservation of our historic neighborhoods and buildings. Ability to make difficult decisions related to growth and development in our community, because we certainly face that. And experience with community visioning and involvement in creating action plans that also demonstrate results. So I'm just sharing that with you this evening, and if some of that resonates with you, it came from the opinions of 293 residents. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Robbie. Appreciate that. See Mr. Fluke. Joe Blueback, good to see you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Realizing the difficulty that the city has with large developments that it has recognized, like Venetian Bay, I'd just like to encourage you to ensure that the qualifications of whoever you select does have large development background and be able to support the city in the deficiencies that it needs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Cindy.
Good afternoon. Cindy Snuzak, 512 Yukon. Sorry to walk in late. I'd like to kind of springboard off something that Mr. Bluebeck had said. When you look at the experience of people, I've gone through not all of the resumes, and I apologize for that, but there's a big difference between somebody who's done administrator type work for a few years in a community, even if it is of our size, if the kinds of challenges, I hope you do situational interviewing, the kinds of challenges that they may have faced may not be the kind of challenges that they're going to face here. And so just because it's a town of 38,000 or a town of 30,000 does not mean that they're going to transfer well. So I hope when you get down to the one-on-one conversations, you talk about not what are your thoughts about what you might do, but focus much more on how have you met a challenge already in your work life that looked like this, this, and this. So it kind of makes the applicant speak to you in a language that translates more directly to what goes on here. The other thing is, I would be surprised if, and I think there was one resume that did this, if you gave too much weight as a consultant, that you give too much weight to the fact that somebody has consulting experience. Unless the rest of the resume shows that they've really done true leadership, not planning, not HR administration, but leading others to do the best job that they can while meeting your needs, that's really important. So that's boots on the ground leadership as opposed to, you know, I had a staff of 6 or I had a staff of 10. The ability to really understand and recommend and task staff with doing good research so that you can make the best possible decision, that's very valuable to me as a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your comments. Any others for public participation? Now seeing none, public participation is closed. The Smyrna Beach Commission will review 11 semifinalist applicants for the position of city manager as candidates. The city manager is responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations across all city departments, providing professional advice to elected officials, and executing the city's annual budget, in addition to a host of other senior executive responsibilities. He or she is our city's chief executive. Our goal this evening is to select another short list of 3 to 5 finalists, 3 to 6 finalists. We have the Executive Vice President of Recruitment and Leadership Development, Doug Thomas, on a Zoom call with us right now from Strategic Government Resources. And in a few minutes, Doug will be joining us and leading us through the discussion. We are anxious to have you participate in the future. You've got your opportunity and had your opportunity tonight. June 7th and 8th will be another opportunity, and it is an extended period of time for most of the day on both of those days. I think Saturday is the day where you would be able to personally come in and have a look. We'll have the candidates around the room in different places, and you'll be able to personally go up and talk and interview, etc. So please tell your friends and neighbors, and we'd love to have the participation that we know that you can provide. Mr. Thomas, are you there?
Yes, I am, Mayor.
Hi, can we turn Doug's gain up a little so we can hear him better? Say some more words, Doug.
Okay. How about testing? 1,
Really
2, 3.
good. Excellent.
Good.
Thank you so very much. Appreciate our conversation earlier today and describing how we're going to proceed tonight. And if you'll just lead us along, I'll shut up and let you get started.
Not a problem, Mayor. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Well, it's I'm sorry I'm not there physically with you tonight, but we'll nonetheless be able to work through technology and get through this process as well. I've mentioned when I've met with you on earlier occasions that the decision you make to select your city manager is clearly one, if not the most important decision you make as an elected official. That person has to be able to help you guide your individual and collective goals and expectations. And I know from my working with you all, as well as with your staff and getting knowing your community even better, you have a very engaged community, as evidenced by some of the speakers that were there this evening. So I know that this is a very important issue in all of your minds and your community's mind as well. I just, as a preface, when I heard a couple of the comments that were raised by one or more of your speakers, I want to kind of set the table as far as what's been done to date and the tasks that we have before you this evening. So when we last met, we went through a high-level triage of the total candidate pool, and out of that process, the commission selected a smaller number of semifinalists that decided that they asked to continue in the process. As I mentioned during that window, we sometimes lose some candidates, which was the case here. We had one candidate that had accepted another position. Various positions are in various time levels, and so even though they're a candidate in one search, they may be ahead of us, and that was the case in one of your communities. And one of the other candidates that you had selected as a semifinalist ultimately withdrew, was going to be a finalist in another community and really wanted to put his energies into that search and not be doing parallel searches. So that being the case, you ended up with 11 semifinalists. And for the benefit of the audience that is there and some of the comments that were raised, the 11 semifinalists, in addition to when they originally applied to the position and provided us a copy of their cover letter and their resume and answered a very brief questionnaire just so we kind of understand a little bit more about their background as part of their application process, the semifinalist work gets a little more involved, and you all have seen and been the recipient of that involved work. So what we ask our semifinalists to do is respond to a fairly detailed questionnaire. That questionnaire for this particular search involved 21 questions about the size of the cities they worked in, the size of budgets, the people and the departments they oversaw, identified a lot of information about their management style, incorporated questions about anything that might be of concern to you as a future employer, based on a background in newspaper type searches and efforts. We also incorporated a variety of questions so that we could hear their background and how they would take their background and skills and apply them to the issues that are very important to you as elected officials and important to your community. So I heard your one speaker talk about leadership and environmental and historic preservation and downtown development, how to deal with growth management, community visioning and strategic planning, and overall development experience and project management type experience. And so I know that all of you had a chance to review that, but I wanted to make sure that your audience knew that that was part of our effort to learn more about these candidates. So they all provided detailed written responses to those 21 questions to try to help you and us understand their background a little more. And then above and beyond that, we also ask each of the semifinalists to respond to 4 pre-recorded video interview questions. Those are timed to be no greater than 4 minutes in length. I will tell you, as someone who's now worked with SGR for the last 8 years in this capacity, video interviews have been difficult in earlier years because pre-COVID, they were a bit of a challenge. And most of my clients all love the video interviews. Most of my candidates hate the video interviews. And the reason they do that is because you're simply talking to a blank screen. It's not a two-way process similar to what we're going on right now. And so I will tell you that post-COVID and the world of video and Zoom and Teams and everything else, everybody's gotten better with that. But I also ask you as elected officials to provide some level of grace, because if you envision simply talking to a screen and not having any feedback, visual cues, it is a bit challenging. And I will just tell you without a doubt, I think overall I've seen the quality of video interviews improve, especially post-COVID as everybody got used to that technology. But in the same token, I will just tell you, I've never had a candidate that didn't interview more dynamically, if you will, when they're in a face-to-face circumstance than they would in an interview that's a one-way. So just use that as a bit of a background. So with that being the case, the goal here is to try to help you get to know these candidates better. And I describe this as really a sense of almost like peeling the skins off an onion. You now start to, this work is actually somewhat easier than the initial work, because initially when you were triaging candidates, you were just taking kind of their resume and cover letters and getting a feel for them. Now you've got much more feedback and insight on these candidates and their background, their style, and their approaches and their experiences to the issues you're facing. So, but that being said, this also involves some homework on your behalf. So I'll thank you in advance for all the time that you spent going through resumes and cover letters and the material that the candidates had put forward to go to be prepared for this effort. So what I'd like to do with that is a little bit of a background. Let me share a screen, and hopefully you're able to allow me, hopefully I'm already set up to do that. Yep, it is, good, okay. So let me share a screen, and I'd like to reintroduce these candidates that are under consideration for you and make sure it's all showing up. Is that showing up at your end?
We're seeing it, Doug.
Excellent, good, okay, super, all right. So the goal tonight is that, as you had mentioned, Mayor Cleveland, the approach is to review the 11 candidates that are semifinalists for consideration. We typically like to have a community select somewhere around 3 to 5 folks, and we'll talk about that number here shortly, that you would like to invite to participate in your on-site interviews. And at that point, then after we've gone through the selection of those candidates, I want to review kind of the next steps of what the candidates are going to be doing. There's some feedback I need from you as the client in terms of expectations. And then we'll walk you through, I've been working with Heather in your HR department on putting together kind of a draft schedule just to get a flavor, which includes staff feedback, your feedback, obviously, as elected officials, as well as the community meet and greet that you mentioned as well, Mayor. So I just want to go back to a slide that we used before when we last met. This is the triage process. We basically are trying to take from the start of all your candidates and studying to get to know them better and investing more time, energy, and resources at each level of the search. So the first process was a high-level triage to get you to the semifinalists. We're now at the semifinalist level, as we mentioned. Now we're learning about their style and background and experiences and issues that might be of concern to you as an employer. And then as you go through the next step, the work doesn't stop for these folks. We have background work, full-blown media searches, reference type work, and some other exercises we're going to be asking the candidate to do that are reflective of skills that would be essential in the role of a city manager. So recognizing we're now kind of in that middle role, but about to step into the next role as finalists going forward. And that's when you really are going to spend the remaining dollars and resources to make sure that we know everything about these folks that we need to know and you need to know as their background. So in the only order that we have, what I've tried to do here in order to reference, I know as you've gone through video interviews and background, sometimes it's difficult to put a name and a face together again. So what I try to do with the candidates, recognizing that I did not ask for a headshot of them yet. Normally we do that at the finalist level, but what I try to do is take at least as favorable as possible snapshot from the video interviews so that you can at least remember who that was when you're trying to remember the name of the effort there as well. And I'm going to go through these candidates just at a very high level just to reacquaint them to you and also allow you to address any questions or concerns that you might have about each of these candidates to each other, or if there's questions that you have for me or any insights that I may be able to add as you're starting to evaluate their candidacy. I'll say that there is the only order that we have, you should not preference that the first candidate is higher importance than the last candidate. What we've done is done this in an alphabetized approach based on their first names. So don't put any more credence in the fact of the first candidate versus the 11th candidate in that effort. So with that as a background, everybody comfortable? I'm going to basically just reintroduce the candidate, open it up if you have questions about any of those individuals or any insights that you would like me to add or you would like to share. And then the goal here then, after we go through these candidates, is we will go through a ranking process that's similar to what we did for to identify your semifinalists. And I'm going to be asking you to say, for each candidate, assign them a number of 1, meaning they're definitely a candidate you would like to have as a finalist. 2 being a candidate that you're may not be your strongest candidate, but you're okay to learn more about them as a finalist. And a 3 being a candidate that you just don't think is the right fit for you for whatever reason, or you're not interested in advancing to the next step. So if you kind of use those as your background, hopefully you've had a chance to do that as you've gone through the material, but you may change some of those numbers as you hear each other or comments that might come up through this conversation. So with that as a background, the first candidate is Bilal Iftikhar. Bilal is currently the Director of Utilities, and he serves as an acting city manager as needed with the city of Winter Springs. Comparable sized community to yours here in Florida. Has been in that role since 2023. Prior to that, he served as the Director of Public Works and Utilities and also the acting Deputy Assistant City Manager as needed with the city of Sanford, another Central Florida community. A little larger than yours. I've served in that role for about 21 years in that effort. Bilal brings an extensive background in education. He has a master's degree in public administration. He is also a he's admitted to the Florida bar as an attorney, and also had an undergraduate degree in civil engineering and is a registered engineer here in the state of Florida. Bilal is a candidate that I know a little bit more about because he was recently a finalist for an assistant county administrator role for a county here in Florida. He was one of 5 finalists that were involved with that. So I've seen him interview and we've done all the background on him as well. He has expressed an interest. I reached out to him about this position, especially because of his extensive background in strategic planning and project management and construction programs. I know he's got an extensive background in utilities. That's not as critical to you, given the fact you've got the New Smyrna Utilities Authority running your effort, but clearly there's a relationship with the city and those functions. And I know that Bilal was very much interested in stepping into a role kind of out of the public works, engineering, and utility arena into a more general management role, which was why he was interested in the assistant county administrator role in the position that I had before. So with that as a background, I will open it up if there's questions or if any of you want to have any comments about Bilal that you would share with your colleagues as we kind of evaluate these candidates.
Anybody? Doug, maybe you can offer, I didn't see much in the budget question for an answer. How about his budgeting experience and finance?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable there. There were some questions asked about kind of their budgeting background. Obviously, a good portion, I will tell you, although in your community, because utilities is not part of your day-to-day functions, that's being done by your utilities authority there. Typically, Mayor, the public works utilities operation is one of the biggest budgets in almost any city. And so I'm very comfortable with his background and skill set, given the size and the operations and the experience that he has. I think you also get some insight about how he tries to identify developing a very, very extensive background in strategic planning and trying to link the goals and the priorities of the budget to the plan. So he kind of gets that concept. That was certainly an element as part of the interview process in the other community. So I think that although he has not necessarily been responsible for the entire city budget in his operations, he's had general fund and significant utility and enterprise fund operations in the communities in which he's operated. So the pretty good size operations and budget. So I'm pretty comfortable on that front.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? All right, next. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, great. Okay, the next candidate, Carmen Davis. Carmen, also another Florida candidate. Her position most recently was with the city of Lake Worth Beach. Was there for a few years down in South Florida. Once again, comparable size city, waterfront community on the Atlantic side of the state as well. She served for a period of time as a chief operating officer for it's called the Jackson Medical Mall Foundation in Jackson, Mississippi. It was taking an abandoned or a dark mall, if you will, and converting it into a medical complex and handled project management and efforts there for a period of time. And then prior to that, also has county experience as a county administrator in Hinds County, Mississippi, obviously a much larger organization from 2010 to 2020. So brings both county experience as well as city management, executive leadership, and then significant project management experience as the chief operating officer for that redevelopment of the mall that I mentioned as well. Budgets would be fairly comparable in size, even though they've been city and counties, but fairly comparable in size to your operations. Earlier in her career, she brings a planning background working with the city of Detroit and a couple different positions as a city planner from 2007 to 2009 and then again in 1993 to 2001. Has a master's degree in business administration as well as a bachelor's degree in urban planning in the process. And so with that, I will turn it back over to you for any comments or questions you might have on Carmen.
Anybody for Carmen Davis to question or comment? Seeing none, keep going, Doug.
Okay, gotcha. One thing I'll also mention, one thing I may not have mentioned, one of the questions that we did ask in the questionnaire was, is there anything in their background that might be of concern to you as a future employer? As you know, we did what we call a stage 1 media search on these individuals, which is a LexisNexis. So we've asked the candidates to provide any background that they think might be of interest to us, which they've done in their questionnaire. And then we've also, looked at newspaper articles and various things that have come up as part of that kind of higher level media search that we do at the semifinalist level. I should preface that although there's a variety of issues that each of the candidates have discussed, generally speaking, I will tell you that what we found at the LexisNexis stage 1 level of media were very consistent with the items that they raised in their background. So, but we certainly can address that if going forward. So that's just to add that point, because I don't know if I elaborated on that when we first started. Okay, the next candidate, Doug Maxiner. Doug was most recently the city administrator with the city of East Moline, Illinois. Once again, a little smaller than your community, but fairly close in overall size, and did that opportunity. And Doug had a chance to, based on the position of looking at his window, he could retire and receive some incentives. So that was a retirement provided sample notice. So he's been out of work earlier in 2023, but that was a planned retirement in order to maximize his retirement benefits with the Illinois retirement system. Prior to that, he served as a city administrator for 2 years, a comparable size community as well in Moline, Illinois, comparable to East Moline, obviously in the Chicago metro area there. Served for 4 years as a village administrator in Wauconda, Illinois, and then also as a village administrator for a few years in Hampshire, Illinois. And then also had a variety of positions with the city of McHenry back in the metro area of Chicago as well, comparable size community as a city administrator for 8 years, and then as an assistant city administrator from 1999 to 2002. Has a master's in public administration and a bachelor's degree in political science, and has expressed an interest in, I've had Doug in a couple of my Florida searches of recent. I know he's interested in relocating to the Sunshine State, but has indicated still has quite a bit of gas in his tank and wants to continue employment. So with that as a background, I'll turn it over to you, Mayor.
Any questions or comments? I did notice that on the strategic planning in one city, where there was none, he initiated a strategic plan and carried it all the way through. I thought that was a plus for him.
Yep. Very much so. Any other questions there?
None. Go ahead.
Okay, next candidate, James Slayton, or Jim. Jim, I know Jim personally. He is one of our Polk County managers, but I got to know him a long time ago. As you know, I'm over in Lakeland, and Lake Wales is kind of down the road off of Route 60 here in southern part of Polk County. But Jim has a wealth of experience with the city of Lake Wales. I've seen him kind of grow up into the various roles. He started as an intern there, as you saw his background, but then eventually was hired as an IT director and network administrator from 2005 to 2012, and then worked his way up through the various positions. He was Ken Fields, who was the former city manager in Lake Wales. He was promoted to the deputy and assistant city manager when Ken retired. Jim was appointed as city manager. And as I said, works extensive background with one employer. Good tenure, good background. Lake Wales has gone through a lot of downtown development. He's identified a variety of his strategic planning and implementation of projects. They just announced recently doing a new kind of a shuttle system for their downtown area. So I know that's a factor of concern about parking and how to get people in and around there as well. Jim has not looked for a lot of positions. He has expressed interest in waterfront communities. He's obviously in Polk County in an inland area. The communities he's expressed interest in all are on the coastlines. I will tell you that Jim, it was also last night I met with the city of Treasure Island to select, same meeting you're having tonight, we had last night, 11 semifinalists, and Jim was also selected as a finalist in the city of Treasure Island. So a different side of the state, but consistent. He's not out looking for everything. He's really looking to stay in Florida and looking to stay on the coastline, and has a very good reputation locally here in Polk County. The other piece I would highlight on this one, Jim's the first candidate you'll see that has some extensive additional professional development leadership. There are two main programs for senior executives. One of them is the Senior Executive Institute in the University of Virginia. The other is the Harvard University Senior Executive Program. So he has gone to one of those two premier programs. The other piece that you see there is under the International City County Management Association, or ICMA, there's an ability to be a credentialed manager, which is what the ICMA-CM stands for. That is a commitment to professional development. It's a self-assessment process involving 360 reviews, and then also identifying a work plan to try to enhance your skill sets and become a well-skilled in all different areas of management. And that requires, at a minimum, a 40-hour continuing education work on an ongoing basis, and continues to have peer reviews. So you're going to see a couple of your candidates that have the ICMA credentialed. Jim is just happened to be the first one, so I wanted to highlight that to you as well. Turn it back over to you.
Any comments or questions about Mr. Slayton? Yes, sir. Commissioner Hartman's up.
So obviously he's been at his current position for quite a while. Other than just a change of scenery, do you have any other ideas as to why he may be deciding to change this late in his career path?
No, I think he's looking for a bigger opportunity, but he also, it's not, Treasure Island's obviously smaller than you, so I think, that's a piece of it, but it's more about the projects and the dynamics. I'm currently involved with 3 communities in Florida, and a couple of my candidates applied for all 3. Jim did not apply for the other third one that was up in the Panhandle area. So I put all 3 of those communities as premier communities, and the types of projects and the type of development and the issues you're facing is what, and when Jim called me about this opportunity, is what was driving him. So it's not really just the beach, that's a component, but in the same token, it's about the size, the scope, and the challenges that each of the communities in which he's applied for are facing and dealing with, that professionally is of interest to him.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Doug, I have one under question 9, and by the way, your bank of questions was very helpful for revealing strengths and opportunities. Question 9 is about the philosophy and approach to building strong, inclusive workplace, motivating employees. I appreciated and enjoyed servant leadership. I also thought it was good non-micromanagement. He cited that, Reagan-esque. And then I got a little bit concerned when it says employees should feel self-directed. And that's as far as he went. I'm looking for something in the terms of accountability, and I didn't see it in the answer. From your personal experience or from other information you have, do you have any further information about whether he really feels that all workforces should be self-directed?
Mayor, I wished I could fill you in there. I know Jim as a colleague in the city management arena, and I know the community, and I've driven through the community on a regular basis, so I've kind of seen what changes they've got. I'm going to rely largely upon, as I say, he's got a very good reputation here in Polk County by other colleagues that are managers. And he did identify an issue he's facing with regards to his police department and tried to address that as best as possible. Identified that effort. So my sense is there is a strong level of accountability by giving direction and feedback, but I'm reacting to it in a similar vein as you. I'm reacting to what I've seen. I just don't have that level of knowledge of him in terms of his employee relationship, so to speak.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Go ahead to the next one.
Okay. Next candidate, Jeff Mihalic. Jeff obviously is coming from a much larger organization, was previously the city manager in Bozeman, Montana, from 2020 to 2024. has also worked as a deputy city manager and chief operating officer in the city of Fort Collins, Colorado, from 2014 to 2020, and was the assistant city manager in the city of Surprise, Arizona, from 2008 to 2014. Jeff is also a credentialed manager, as I mentioned, with Jim Slayton as well, so one of several of your candidates that have the ICMA CM credentials. Jeff is, he has indicated some of his challenges that he went through in Bozeman. He outlined that. That certainly was part of his desire or his resignation there. He is obviously looking for the next opportunity. I did talk to him earlier this week because I wanted to get a sense of, hey, you've been in some larger organizations and had expressed desire for maybe even bigger organizations. Wanted to get a feel for, his sense of desire for the opportunity here in Florida. He indicated that it really is about the projects, similar to what I mentioned with Jim Slayton. It is about the type of projects and issues. He is very much interested. Every community he's been involved with has been high growth community, and had to manage that kind of dynamic that you're all facing about how do you grow without it impacting the quality of life and balancing all the interests. So that's his desire for the community that, in this case, for New Smyrna Beach. He was impressed with the projects and the challenges, the issues you were facing, and expressed an interest to continue in that effort, even though it is a smaller community than what he's traditionally worked in.
Any questions or comments about Jeff? Commissioner Perrine has one.
So I did a deep dive on these candidates myself, and have concerns with what was on the news in Montana, and I'm surprised you left him as a candidate. I wondered if you could elaborate on the video that was very lengthy that was on the news.
Sure. And I mentioned in a high level, I mentioned the fact that it's there, and he certainly addressed it as well. So the circumstances, for those of you who may not have followed it, I have watched it's about 17 minutes in length in video. To set the stage, he was involved in a remote meeting with a Zoom meeting, if you will, with his department heads. At the end of that meeting, he had a conversation. The other department heads had signed off, and he had been involved in a conversation with their development director or community development director about a variety of topics. And during that period, neither he nor the development director was aware that apparently the meeting was being recorded, and made a variety of comments that were pretty controversial, understandably, about some members of the elected body, also about some dynamics of the community, and certainly had no idea that it was a recorded video. And ultimately, that video was determined in some fashion by some other member of the Bozeman staff or the county or and was subsequently released publicly. And as a result of that, that led to, not surprisingly, a bit of concerns in the community and with several of the elected officials there that were part of those conversations. So he has apologized for that. He has said, certainly I've got a body of work that goes beyond that. He has indicated he's obviously learned from that. But that certainly was a milestone event that led to his ultimate resignation with the city of Bozeman. So, it's one of those dynamics. Every community ultimately has some level of tolerance for, or some level of grace, but in some cases, those issues may be a bridge too far to go with. I can tell you, although I do not know Jeff prior to this search, I will tell you I know the work that the city of Fort Collins did with regards to priority-based budgeting. When I was city manager in Lakeland, Fort Collins and Lakeland were one of the first cities in the country to implement priority-based budgeting, where you take your strategic plan and link it to your budget to make sure that you're spending time and resources and allocations appropriately. I had the chance to meet with Jeff's city manager at the time. Both of us were on a national presentation program about priority-based budgeting. So I've seen that work. I know it's a high-quality community, and that was something that expressed an interest in me in terms of the background. But certainly the biggest dynamic he faces is the circumstances that you just mentioned, Vice Mayor, about the circumstances that led to his resignation in Bozeman.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner McGurk's got one for you.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, this guy was very interesting to me on paper. Before I even knew what it was, he was my first guy, head and shoulders. I mean, this guy separates himself from everybody else on this list. After watching the video a few times and thinking about it, it's unfortunate whether it was, hopefully for this guy, it was a singular, unfortunate incident he will be able to get past. Unfortunately, I think it's a little too new, and I think the problem is if we hired him and we end up getting the guy on the video, we don't recover from that. So I unfortunately can't support this guy, but I will tell you that he is head and shoulders, his resume, everything he's done and has done, and his energy is probably perfect for New Smyrna.
Commissioner Martin?
I'm sort of in the middle. I think we all deserve an opportunity to blow off steam. It was certainly unfortunate the way he did it, and I had originally said no. But as I looked over his body of accomplishments and the work he's done, and thought of the mistakes we all have made that we would desperately like to take back, I'm not sure that he should be dismissed out of hand. Do we value his work, or is our total concern about this one hugely glaring error that he made? So I'm on a seesaw.
Anybody else?
I would agree with Commissioner Martin, so, you know, I scored him number one the first go around. I think he's from a larger city, so he's got that knowledge. Obviously, he's urban and regional planning, I think is something that we needed, so his credentials are there. But like Commissioner McGurk said, you know, that's a rare, it's an unfortunate event that's still recent in everybody's mind, and whether or not we can get through that, I think is going to be the question. So.
Commissioner Martin?
Well, just should he be our final selection, I think it would be up to us and how to present him to the city. The things that we care about as a community that he has been successfully able to implement versus this one glaring, horrific error. So I think, should he be selected, I think it's on us to promote him in the most positive way possible.
Right.
Just a thought.
Vice
I
Mayor.
too rated him a 1. I found his resume being probably the top one. When I heard the video, I was very disappointed, and for transparency, I wouldn't trust somebody like that to ever work with him. So I don't want to waste his time, because I can't get past the things he said. They're too damaging to a city.
Not to drag this out, we're talking more about a candidate. It was unlikely, but I too saw the video. I think it goes to motive and to how I am when nobody's watching, and therefore that was the most telling of all the videos you sent us. That one you did not send, thankfully, but we discovered it. It was the most telling and the most revealing. So I had him a 1 in the very beginning, loved his accomplishments, but like Pete Rose, right? Should be in the Hall of Fame, banned from baseball. He's a 4 on a scale of 1 to 3 that you have us rank him in my mind. For all the reasons that all the commissioners have said. And I love the second try that Commissioner Martin talks about, and love the, hey, how would we compensate to our city? But when it goes as deep, having watched it a couple times, it goes as deep as, here's how I think, here's how I process, here's what I have inside. It was too much for me to overcome, so. All right,
Understood.
we've all given you our views. Next
Gotcha.
one, please.
Understood. Gotcha. Okay. All right. Your next candidate, Kevin Cowper. Kevin, this has been a bit of a transition here. Kevin was the city manager in Dothan, Alabama when he was selected, but in April there was a transition that took place that's actually created quite an uproar up there as well. If you, in the media work that we've got, there's been some folks trying to bring him back, and it is what it is at this stage of the game, but they've decided to separate in that area. I don't see anything, I have spoken to him, I don't see anything that he did wrong or anything of that nature. It's just a dynamic that took place with regards to the politics and the kind of the political landscape there in Dothan. But so that is a change we had seen before, and he addressed that as well. So prior to that, he was an assistant city manager with a chief operating officer at the city of Auburn, Alabama from 2007 to 2019. So a good 12-year run there as well. And then a community development director in Pensacola, Florida. So it does bring Florida experience, obviously, up in the Panhandle area for 6 years, and would understand kind of the dynamics of shoreline areas and the impacts of storms and things like that. Obviously, he's got a master's degree in planning and a bachelor's degree in geography. He is a AICP, which is the American Institute of Certified Planners, which is the credential status. If you're a planner, that would be a status that you would aspire to. It's the highest level that you can get with AICP work as well. So that's Kevin, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor, for any feedback or comments.
Any questions or comments about Kevin?
Else?
I ranked him high after his answers to question 6 to describe your experiences and skills as a municipal financial management, budget development, and capital infrastructure planning related to financing. So I thought he was strong in finance, and so I rated him high. I think that's an asset that we need going forward. Commissioner McGurk.
So I got a bachelor's degree from West Florida in Pensacola. Pensacola, I found very fascinating in that, in some specific ways, it reminded me of a bigger version of, and when I say bigger, I mean just more spread out, of New Smyrna. It has a river, it has an ocean, it has a lot of similar attributes to it. I like the planning background because I think we all talk about our growth issues and we all put those as number one. But having a deep background in planning, to me, is very important, would be a very important attribute to a city manager as we deal with all the PUDs and the growth issues and, walking the fine lines of, what can we do, can't we do, those kind of things. So I also had him ranked very high.
Anyone else? All right, Doug, on to the next one.
Okay. And just, Commissioner, just as a follow-up, we often see folks that come from community development that move in as planners, that move into city management. The fact is your community development department really interfaces with all aspects of your department, much like a finance director. They don't run the respective departments, but they know how they interface, especially as it relates to planning and development and project management and things like that. So the point that you raised, I think, is fairly similar. I'm doing some work up in the Panhandle right now, and just recently was in Pensacola, and as you say, waterfront area, a lot of similar dynamics in terms of tourism and attraction. So thought that was a good connection there as well. So good catch. Okay, next candidate, Patrick Marsh. Patrick has most recently been doing independent consulting work with a variety of clients, both here and elsewhere across the country. His stint was most recently as a city manager. He was actually a deputy city manager before the manager left in Fernley, Nevada, and left there after a relatively short period of time. There was some dynamics there with a mayor that wanted him to hire someone that he felt that was outside the scope of the mayor's responsibility, and ultimately separated in that capacity. Had a lengthy career. His most lengthy run was a city administrator in Fitchburg, Wisconsin, from 2015 to 2021, a good stretch in that window. And then was also an administrator and economic development director in Monona, Wisconsin. Patrick has a bachelor's and master's, obviously, in public administration, political science. He is another one of your credentialed managers. And when you see some of the background, and he's identified as well in his effort, I've had Patrick in a couple of my searches. In 2 communities, he was a finalist But ultimately, we were not able to coordinate his schedule with the community's schedule. So I know Patrick from a few years back in 2 different searches that I had him with, but just we weren't able to kind of pull it together because he was doing consulting work and was committed to finishing a project and a presentation on the most recent one that we had. You may have seen in his background, he referenced it in his material back during the early days of COVID. He was involved in an altercation in South Carolina. At the end of the day, his record was expunged. That he was, he was arrested, but ultimately expunged from the record, where there was a lot of disputes in terms of what actually took place. But things got a little dicey for him in that regard in Fitchburg, and then it got as ultimately he left and was separated from Fitchburg. It got that was not a smooth exit. But at the end of the day, it all got settled, resolved, and moved forward. So you're certainly aware of that background. He's addressed it, but what I can tell you is we've done the background work, and we've seen the paperwork that things have been expunged, and the record is clear at this stage of the game. But obviously, there's still media coverage that's out there, so that piece is you're certainly aware of. But Patrick has relocated. He is now, I believe, in Port Charlotte, Florida. So he is a Florida native, or not a native, but a resident at this stage of the game, and is expressing an interest in staying here in the state of Florida and continuing in city management work.
Any comments or questions about Patrick? Yes, sir. Mr. Hartman.
So you mentioned he was in Port Charlotte. Do you know what he's doing there as employment?
No, he's basically doing consulting at this point and doing projects. Many managers, when they're in what we call in transition, will do consulting operations, and they can do that from home, and then they travel as necessary for the project. So my take is that's what he's doing now as an independent consultant. I don't know the nature of the work he may be doing at this stage, but I know he's done that when I've had him in other searches. He's been involved in different parts of the country with independent consulting work for localities.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. All right. Next one, Doug. Thanks.
Okay. Next candidate is Pat Oman. Pat was most recently the county administrator in Becker County, served in that capacity for 3 years, and then worked for a private sector group for a year. And I'll explain kind of the dynamics here shortly in terms of that effort as well. And then prior to that work was a county administrator in Mille Lacs County up in Minnesota as well from 2015 to 2021. Has a background in economic development and housing redevelopment authority experience. So city administrator, executive director of their housing redevelopment authority with Moose Lake, Minnesota, obviously a smaller community for a few years. And then also was a director of economic development and their EDA and housing redevelopment authority in Carlton County, Minnesota from 2005 to 2013. A couple different master's degree, and is also an economic development financial professional, one of the certifications through the economic development agencies as well. As I've talked to Pat and looked at his efforts with regards to Becker County, and he identified the dynamic in that transition, that was a county that had not really kept up with best management practices, information about no job descriptions, people hadn't been evaluated. He was brought on board to really bring about some change and some accountability in that effort. There was a change in dynamics with the elected officials after an election. There was some problems with their information technology division. They were out of compliance with the sheriff's department and the control measures that you need for lean law enforcement information networks and things of that nature. Ultimately, that person resigned, and then there was a desire by one or more of the elected officials to bring her back. He was not interested in doing that given the challenge they've got, and he became a target at that point. So what we've seen so far seems to be what he has described to us, at least on the stage one media work as well. So, there's a bit there, but he really did try to bring about changes and bring that organization up to the contemporary standards. He'd indicated he had an expression on work he did, as you can see in his background, he has a lot of economic development experience, and you'll see in his material a lot of trying to bring wealth generation to their respective communities. And he really wanted to work in the private sector. He had, early in his year, he had worked, I believe, with Honeywell. It goes previous in his effort, and he enjoyed that type of work and wanted to try that with Skywater Technology after he left Middlesex County, but just felt that it wasn't the best fit, and he really missed the local government operation, which is why I went back into the arena. So Pat is in transition now, looking for the next opportunity, and the size of the communities were comparable in this effort. So he was definitely interested in your opportunity here in New Smyrna Beach.
Any comments or questions about Pat? Commissioner Martin?
Yeah, I just have concerns that he doesn't begin to have anything comparable. He doesn't have the kind of professional credentials that I think we should have in a new city manager. So,
Commissioner Perrine?
The more I listen to Pat Oman, he said key words in his interview that really jumped out at me. He, unlike the other candidate that said self-direct when it comes to staffing, he mentioned that he measures objectives, he wants accountability, and he does best practicing and a lot of benchmarking. Those are things I've quoted nonstop since I've been up here on the dais, that we do need benchmarking, and he was heavy in finance, budgets, bonds, and then, like you said, economic development. So I don't know how much of all of that can be applied to the city manager, but he definitely said the words for strong leadership that I was looking for.
Any other comments? I share that. I was excited about the Honeywell experience and the budget expertise, and then on his relationships, the one-on-one comms, and the know how you are measured will tell you how you perform. I loved all those things. They're all very sound practices. And then I, like Commissioner Martin, saw that there are many county jobs, but very few city jobs where the ownership is tighter. And so a little concerned about that pedigree. Can you either assuage my fears or encourage them?
I'm not sure. I mean, I get the sense that both you and Valley had identified that he is a process-driven individual. That's certainly my take in his review, that he sets standards and holds people accountable and tracks the efforts of what you're trying to do. I think that's a fair representation of at least my involvement with him and my conversations with him about the things that he was doing in his different communities. So I think he's got a solid background in that effort. He certainly brings the experience of collective bargaining. Minnesota has extensive, very strong union efforts, so that was an element that I thought might be a factor for you as well. And as you'll see, those communities that don't, or those candidates that don't necessarily come from Florida, brings some level of emergency management effort. It's not necessarily a hurricane, maybe flooding or snow or winds or things like that, but not necessarily the same. So that's always an issue as well. And I thought he tried to at least address as best as possible how he's dealt with emergencies and emergency operations and flooding and things like that. But I know that's always a concern when people in Florida, especially coastal communities like yours, to somebody understand the nature of that, to deal with it. So I think he's got a strong background. I like his economic development background approach. I think generally the size of the communities is comparable to yours, even though in some cases they're counties.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Doug. On to the next one.
Okay. All right, next candidate is Paul Brake. I know Paul casually from my years up in Michigan, but I've seen him from time to time when I connect with my Michigan colleagues at the ICMA conference. So Paul most recently was with the city of Royal Oak, Michigan, been in that capacity for about 3 years. They went through some transitions and changed their council, and they decided to go in a different direction. There was nothing we saw in any of his background that raised any concerns in terms of efforts or dynamics that led to or controversies in his separations. He was serving as the city manager of the city of Morgantown, West Virginia, obviously a smaller community of 30,000, comparable to your size. but served in that role for 3 years. And as he mentioned in his material, Morgantown is the home of West Virginia University. And so a lot of tourism activity. They talked about, bringing in 1 million people for football games and, all the functions associated there as well. So big events there. Worked for a period of time in the private sector doing work with Safe Built, which is a contracting agency that worked a lot with local governments up in Michigan. And prior to that, served as city manager in the city of Grand Blanc, Michigan, up kind of in the Thumb area, a smaller community, but served in that capacity for 4 years. Grand Blanc's been a very stable community. His predecessor, Randy Byrne, was there for probably 30 years as city manager. And they also had, at that time, they were doing the Buick Open. So a lot of attention and community events that got national attention during the PGA Tour. And then he worked as an assistant township manager in Meridian Township, which is in the Lansing area, served in that role from 1998 to 2011. I knew his boss very well in Meridian Township. They were a fast-growing area and had to deal with growth management concerns just outside of the Lansing metropolitan metro area there. Paul brings a master's degree in public administration, a bachelor's also in public administration. He has another one of your credentialed managers through ICMA. He also has certification as a community economic or a certified economic community development, the highest level that you get from the economic development agencies. Before, there are 2 premier senior executive programs. Paul actually went to both, the one in Harvard as well as the one in Virginia. He obviously has spent some time in Michigan and in West Virginia, but has expressed some interest in a couple communities that we have here in Florida. So got reacquainted him through this search as well.
Any comments or questions about Paul? Commissioner McGurk.
I overall like this guy. He's scored very high. I had probably just 2 or 3 that separated themselves a little bit from the pack, not much, but he was one of them.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
One of the things that jumped out at me that wasn't mentioned here that I liked a lot was that he developed the parking system as one of his examples. And we definitely have a need for that in this community, the growth management budget. And he is focused on new programs, which I like the innovation to that. And he also commented about the empathy that he has and listening skills, which I think is important for citizens and staff and us. So he hit a lot of highlights for me.
Good. Ms. Martin.
I also had a positive. He was one of my top people.
Anybody else? I think we have to see Paul. He's one of my top 2 for all the reasons people just said. He gave great examples of his of things he has done. So looking forward to seeing him.
Great. Okay. The next candidate, Robin Hayes. Robin most recently was the city manager in Cocoa Beach, Florida, another coastal community on your side of the state. She served as the interim director of finance in Port Orange, Florida from 2021 to 2022, obviously interim capacity, short term. I first met Robin when she was the city manager with the city of Mount Dora, Florida. Was in that capacity from 2016 to 2021. Robin was a finalist for another search, for a city manager search I was doing in Florida. That's when I first got to meet her. And at that time, she was city manager of Mount Dora. Has some financial background, director of management services with the city of Oviedo, Florida for 4 years, and then also a director of finance with Winter Garden there in Central Florida from 2008 to 2012. Has a bachelor's degree in business administration. I think she knows your police chief, as I recall. I think there was a comment that came at your previous meeting about her effort there. As I say, I've known Robin. She's been through some of our searches before, has a good reputation. I know the issue in Cocoa Beach she addressed. She was involved with an evaluation and some concerns with the police chief that got controversial, and ultimately decided to step down from the role as part of that effort. But I'm pretty comfortable with what I've seen in her background, and I've spoken to her about this, and she's indicated she's kind of knows your area pretty well. She grew up in that area, and this has been an opportunity of interest for her. And so I don't see her applying for everything that's out there, but this was a selected community she was definitely interested in.
Thank you. Any comments or questions about that?
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
I thought I saw on LinkedIn where she recently accepted a position. Did she recently take a new job, or is that just a temporary?
I am not aware. She has not indicated to me that her candidacy has changed, so it may be in an interim capacity, but I will certainly, do you know the name of the community? I will certainly verify that if she's going to be selected, if that's a factor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Commissioner Martin?
I was concerned about the recent string of jobs as well as her lack of credentials. I find those in combination to be concerning.
Anybody else? I appreciated her candidacy, one of my top two, certainly from her budget pass, something we need here. She's familiar with the return on investment concept. She understands recruitment and retirement and partnership with the city and building trust and confidence. I particularly was taken with her insight and knowledge of New Smyrna Beach. All of her three questions were what she would ask us. I thought were right on target. Now on to the next one.
Okay. Your last candidate is Scott Moy. Scott is currently the county manager up in Ware County, Georgia, comparable size to you, a county operation, not a city, but a county there. Worked in the private sector for a few years with a procurement type of purchasing program and software type program there in Waycross, Georgia as well. Has served as the city administrator in Blackshear, Georgia, a smaller community from 2004 to 2013, a pretty good stretch for a small community. We often see a lot of turnover in those smaller communities. Has continued to do some adjunct instructor work with Coastal Pines Technical College in the area of public administration and finance, things of that nature. Has Florida experience as well with the city of Fernandina Beach, just up the road from you. As a deputy city manager, also served as an interim city manager for a one-year period there as well. Has a master's degree in public administration, a bachelor's degree in business administration. Scott has expressed an interest in getting back to Florida. Scott was one of my 11 semifinalists over in Treasure Island. Is also they selected him as one of 5 finalists as their search last night as well. So I know he's definitely interested in getting back into the state of Florida. I will tell you, you interview before they do, for what it's worth in the regard. Your interview schedule's earlier in June, they're a little later in June. So.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments for Scott? Ms. Martin?
I noticed that there's a typo in the first line of his summary of qualifications. I'm not sure whether he's had 24 or 34 years of diversified, analytical, and comprehensive. So as somebody who likes and looking for a manager with good attention to detail, to receive a resume with what I consider to be a pretty glaring typo concerned me. The other one was in his questions. One of the things of his 3 questions was, how often will he be evaluated? And that felt a lot to me like, how many vacation days will I be getting? It just did not resonate with me.
Any other comments or questions?
I found interesting his marina work in Fernandina Beach, but that was, he's not high on my list, but that was a plus. It was interesting.
Anything else? All right, Doug, that's it for us.
Okay, all right, so let me do this then. Let me escape out of this. Stop sharing for a sec. And let me get to another slide here. All right, let me go back here for a second. So let me do.
You got your spreadsheet somewhere, I know.
Yeah, I just wanted, before I did that, I wanted to go back to this slide just to make sure everybody had the scoring system appropriate here again. So what we've done, just like we did in the first round, what I'm going to do is put up a template of a spreadsheet with each of the candidates in the order that we just went through them. I'm looking for you to provide your rankings of these candidates. One, a score of 1 is a candidate you're interested in advancing as a finalist. 2 is someone you're okay with at least considering. May not necessarily be your strongest candidate in your mind, but we'll see how that shakes itself out. Or lastly, then, a score of 3, meaning a candidate you're not interested in advancing. And what we can do is we'll take down your scores like we did before. We'll sort them out and see what they look like to figure out if that gets you to somewhere between 3 or 4 or 5 folks that are kind of at the top of the list, as well as the disparities that may shake out in those particular scores. So let me stop doing that, and I will get back to the spreadsheet, and we'll go from there. Okay. Everybody see that?
Yes, we got it.
Okay. And I was hoping you were all going to sit in the same, I was assuming it was like church. You were all going to sit in the same seats as you did the last time. So trying to put them in the order from left to right to avoid the confusion on that. So thank you for not shifting seats on me.
We're in the same pew.
Okay, so we'll take the candidates just in the order we've got, and I'm welcome to start, Mayor, from the left or the right, whichever way you want to go in terms of the process.
Let's start with Commissioner Hartman.
Okay. Okay, first candidate, Bilal.
3.
3. Jason?
1.
1. Mayor?
2.
Or do you want to go last? It's up to you. It's
I'm happy to go. 2.
2.
3.
Those are dropping down to Jeff, not the first one.
Yeah, you're not on the right row. You're going to go all the way up to
I'm sorry.
Lyle.
Good observation.
Oh, I moved my, I don't know what happened there.
You're just
Hang on
trying
here.
to confuse us here.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Yeah, it's,
So let me hear. Something happened. Something just kind of cleaned out of my system. Let's try this again. One more time. I apologize because it's my.
All right, we'll start with Commissioner Hartman.
3.
Oh, this is
It's
weird.
done.
Oh, hang on. This is something. Let me, I don't know what's happening with my spreadsheet here. Let me, hang on for 1 second. There's a kind of, it's. Sorry about that. Just trying to stop the share and hit the wrong screen. Let me do this for a second here.
We're just studying the plaques you have on your wall there and the credentials you have.
Yeah. Let me go back and bring this screen back up here. Okay, something just, we had. All right, let's try this again. For it just it just kind of froze up on me. One more time, I apologize for that. Randy?
3.
3.
1.
Jason? 1.
2.
2.
3.
3.
Okay. All right. Next one is Carmen.
1.
2.
2.
2.
3.
3.
Okay. Doug Maxiner?
2.
3.
1.
3.
3.
Jim Slayton?
1.
3.
2,
1,
2,
Jeff Milich? Milich?
1.
I'm sorry. 1? This is the Bozeman candidate. I thought there was concern there, Jeff. I want to make sure you got the right candidate. I'll take
I have
the
the right
score.
candidate. I believe in second chances, so.
it's the
Okay,
only,
gotcha,
it's the
okay.
only Jeff up there. We got it.
That's fine. I just want to make sure there wasn't confusion on that based on the comments. Okay,
Nope.
all right. Jason?
3,
Okay.
3,
1,
3,
Okay. Kevin Cowper?
Oh,
on to Kevin.
he's a 1.
1?
1,
2,
2,
2,
Okay. Patrick Marsh?
2.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the number.
2.
2. Okay.
3,
3,
3,
3,
Okay. Pat Oman?
3.
3,
3,
3,
1,
It was a 1. I'm sorry, Valley?
1,
1. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Paul Brake?
1.
1,
1,
1,
1,
Okay. Robin Hayes?
3.
1,
1,
3,
1,
Okay. And Scott Moy?
He's a 1.
I'm sorry, 1?
1.
1. Okay.
2,
3,
3,
1,
Let's do this.
and you missed the top one in your scan.
No, it's there. Yeah, it's just in white. Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So 2, 3, 4. These would be your top 5. So Paul's clean. Consensus there. We have a 3 here. A couple here we got to talk through. So what I want to identify, you've got a couple 3s and a couple of these top 5 candidates here. And so what I always like to ask the group is, based on the spread, I realize that, those are candidates that you didn't necessarily advance. Those of you who have provided 3 on a couple of these folks. My question to you is, are you comfortable enough, based on what you've heard, that you'd like to at least give them a fair shot at coming in and convincing you, or at least giving them the opportunity to meet with you and explain their background, their history, and their effort? Maybe that's enough to address the concerns, or is there anything in their background that just makes it a hard 3? Because some candidates, if they know they don't really have the support coming in, might not want to participate if they realize if the deck is kind of stacked against them to begin with. So you want to just take those by candidate, in which we have the 3. We've got Jim. There's a 3 there. We'll just work our way down the list if you're comfortable with that approach.
Yeah, let us talk. We might be able to make it even easier for you. I see Commissioner Hartman wants to say something.
Oh, yeah. My concern with Ms. Hayes is, in the reference material that you sent us, she has an elderly mother or father. My concern is, truly, how much time is she going to dedicate here? If she's going to have to be traveling back and forth to wherever that person may be, or even if she brings them up here, having dealt with the loss of both of my in-laws and my parents, I know that those times can be real trying, and I'm not so sure. I'm concerned about where her mental focus will be if something happens within the next 3 or 4 years or something like that. So that's my concern with that particular candidate.
Okay. And that was Robin you were speaking of,
Yes.
I assume, correct? Gotcha. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, I want to make sure I understood.
But in
Well, since
general-
Robin.
Yeah, but in general, based on my colleagues, I would not draw a hard line on, I've had 1-3 on there. I would not draw a hard line on that, just because we need 5 or more candidates, and if not this, where? And so whittling it down to 3 or 4 for the risk of having somebody drop out because they pick another job. Now we're down to 2. So I like the bigger pool, and I would bow to yes on the 3s I gave with no particular thing. That just didn't think that they were the caliber we're looking for. No, but no incident, no particular problem with any of those that are there.
Yeah. So I agree. Let's stick with the scoring. Just because I gave someone a 3, I mean, this guy, Jim Slayton, he has stayed in one small town his entire life. That's great for that town, maybe. I think that the overall pool lacked good Florida candidates from coastal areas that had airports, marinas, utilities, and a bigger city that maybe they have some experience in growth. So my point is, I think Jim Slayton is not a good fit for here. But that's not to say that the rest of the commissioners saw something that they really liked, and he may turn out to be awesome. So I say we stick with the rankings that we did.
Yeah.
And just go
Anybody
with it.
else?
I'm with staying with the 5.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay with the 5 because Robin, as Commissioner Hartman said, I saw that about the parent too, but that's also a good quality that she would take care of a parent, and she's close enough where she could drive if that, the parent doesn't come here. So I didn't want to, actually, if you look at my scoring, all of them are 1s or 2s, so 5 is great by me.
Yeah, certainly worth it. If she wants to talk about it, that would be great for us to understand. So with that said, Mr. Thomas, we would like to keep those 5.
Okay. So let me ask the one question then. In the event that we lose one, or maybe if you lose a few, do you want to have any conversations about Carmen or Jeff both coming in at 2.2? As because what will happen is I'll shoot a note out to everybody and I'll ask for a quick turnaround. But if 2 or 3 of them say thanks but no thanks, I'm not going to proceed. Do you want, since we're all here tonight, do you want to have a conversation about having another candidate that's kind of in the wings in the event that you lose them, in order to still have 4 or 5 candidates if you lose a few?
Yeah, I get nods around here. So if you go back and do the ask if they're still all in, that would be great. And if that's the case, awesome. If it's not, then 1 for 1, add someone else. Both Carmen and who's under that?
Jeff.
Jeff.
The only thing with that, are we paying for this, for them to come here?
It's only if somebody drops out. So we're going to pay for the 5, and if he calls it back and says one of them drops out, then we would just replace with the next 2 that are on the list.
So they're the alternates.
Yeah.
Yeah,
alternate. I think we just dropped down the pecking order.
I do
That's
too.
how we ranked them.
So the dynamic that you have, so if I were to say, I know a number of you expressed some concerns about Jeff, so it sounded like there was a bridge too far in your minds. So, and you also he has 3 3s versus 2 3s with Carmen. So my question is, if I'm taking, so they both shook out on average at the 2.2 score, but given what I've heard, would you want me to just keep Carmen in the loop as 1, or how would you like me to take them in order? I guess I just, obviously a number of you expressed some real concerns with Jeff, so I don't want to have that kind of go without some conversation.
Is there a conversation here to have? I mean, I have faith in my colleagues here that if they see something that I didn't see, then that's perfectly likely and possible. And so, I'd be happy to listen, but I listen with the jaundice that we've already discussed, so I'd be happy to see him, but
They're both ranked 2.2, so if one drops out, who gets the nod?
the next one down, just by luck, Carmen Davis, I think, with a less number of threes.
Well, I would argue it'd be Jeff, so I think if one drops out, we go from 5 to 6.
Okay, that's fine, too.
Okay, so,
So let me see if I understand it. So if one of our 5 drops out, both Carmen and Jeff are, sounds good to me.
I say no to that. Only reason we originally said 3 to 5. So if one drops out, we still have 4. We don't need 5. We originally said 3 to 5 for that reason in case somebody dropped out. So now why are we confusing the water by adding some that we originally said we weren't going to do?
Any debate on that? Any rebuttal?
Because as I look at the scoring, there's only one clear candidate that each of us truly liked. Everybody else has some combinations of 2s and 3s or 1s. So in the interest to be fair and transparent, and we've had resumes, we've had written responses, we've had
Videos.
the videos, and with all that I've been throughout my life, all of those are kind of like, you really got to sit down and talk to somebody to get a real feel for them. I mean, so I think with all of us kind of being all across the board on all of them, I think then if we have one drop out, then we should go to the 6 and interview those 6 people. You may, who knows, 2 or 3 people may drop out. You said 2 of those are in the Treasure Island shortlist also, right?
yes, you've got Jim Slayton and Scott Moy are both finalists. Now, they're interviewing after you. They're interviewing later.
Right.
So it's unlikely they would drop out of your search. That would be my take. But, I don't know. I'm going to have to, verify that I'll know hopefully within 24 hours whether they're in or out in this search. But you have 2 of those. The good news for you is you're ahead of them.
Good for you, Doug.
Right, but if our negotiation process takes longer than Treasure Island's, they may skip, later than sooner, so.
Yeah, what I'll tell you, Randy, most of the time, within a week to 10 days, you're pretty, you know whether you're going to have a deal or you don't, relatively quickly. So I rarely get into a very protracted conversation. Okay. So I don't think that's as much a concern. It's really just a question of where they're going to put their time and energies in. Yep.
Right.
Ms. Martin.
I don't,
Okay.
We could have, I like having spares in the wings because we don't know who's going to drop out or what other problems there may have. And rather than have to reconvene to end up with another 3 to 5, I'd rather you have that tool in your pocket in case it's needed.
Anybody else?
Just for fairness in the system, if one drops out, I think we bring the 2 in, not because we want that or that's what we plan. I just think, in all fairness, if I was one of those candidates, that just would seem like the natural response to me, is we have to bring them both in. Other than that, you flip a coin and just, pure luck? No. I don't want to do that. So I think that if one drops out, you bring the 2 in, and that leaves us with 6 instead of 5.
So Doug, do you have a piece of advice?
Yeah. So here's what I'd suggest. If there's, there's obviously debate between the 2 that are on the wings. What I'd suggest is if one drops out, you just stay with your 4. If 2 drop out, then you can bring the other 2 in, if that makes some sense.
That makes total sense to me.
Well done. I was headed for a vote, and you've saved us from that. Thank you.
Doesn't make sense to me because I gave both of them a 1, so.
Would you like to have a vote?
I don't have, the more the merrier for me. I mean, I'm looking for a good candidate, and from the feedback that we've got from the citizens, and everything else, you know, more options are better than fewer options, in my opinion.
I generally would agree, Randy, but there's just, Jeff has got a mountain to climb. And, you know, I mean, you and Lisa scored him a 1. Got it. I can't wait to have and understand where that is and how that is. And it may be just your philosophy, everybody screws up once, and I subscribe to that. But on the content, I cannot get there, and so that's why I think he has a particular hard hill to climb. I like the consultant's idea, like Doug's idea about if you lose one, pick one up. If you lose 2, then you pick up the other 2.
Or I guess what I was suggesting, you lose 1, you just go with 4.
Oh, that's right, I'm
If you
sorry.
lose 2,
If you lose
if
1, you
lose 2,
stick with
bring in
4.
2.
If
Yeah.
you lose 2,
That
you
way-
go up to 5, and he'll know very soon.
Yeah. I mean, I just, but to the point that was mentioned about, it's just nice to have some direction in case, so I don't have to reconvene if that's the case. And it may be a moot point. We may say all 5 are on board, and you know that's it, and that's it. But it's just I like to at least have the conversation, so I've got a plan B if need be. Okay, so what I'm hearing.
Hang on just a second.
Without a vote on this,
In fairness to Commissioner Hartman, I want to make sure that he's okay with that. If he's not, then we'll vote which way we're gonna have the alternates set up.
Well, I don't think, what, has Lisa given her opinion? I mean.
Anybody else want to speak?
Or just vote on it. I mean,
Make the motion.
I make a motion that we interview the top 5. If one drops out, we pick up number 6 and number 7.
Okay, so is there a second to that? It's clear to me. Second? One more time for a second, and we can discuss it some more if you'd like. I'll second it for discussion. Anybody else? All right, so we got a motion that says 1 drops out, we pick up 2 more. A little bit, so by the way, we're inviting them and their partner or spouse to come to New Smyrna, and we're going to fund that. And so a small factor in my mind, I absolutely want to get a candidate, and I want to have us to have a full slate. I'm just perplexed with Jeff.
My comment is let's do what Doug says. If 1 drops out, we stick with 4. If 2 drops out, then we bring 1 in.
I could also support if 1 drops out, we stay with 4. If 2 drop out, we bring in 2 more. But I always want to keep Carmen and Jeff in reserve because the next month we could lose all kinds, you know. So I'm just, I don't want to have to reconvene to look for more people. I want that option to stay out there.
And Jeff, they will be notified and be aware that they're a finalist very quickly. Is that right?
By tomorrow, that's, yeah,
Okay.
by tomorrow, I'll be notifying
Yeah.
them, and I
Right.
normally ask them to return ASAP. Normally, I give them 24 to 40 weekend, I'm sure, with all these folks.
Any other comments? Okay, so the motion on the floor is if 1 drops out, we pick up 2. A yes vote means we pick up 2. A no vote means we stick with what we have, and if 1 drops out, we go with 4. Madam City Clerk, call roll.
Wait. Point, if 1 drops out, we go with 4, but if 2 drop out, we pick up the other 2.
Correct.
Wasn't my motion.
No, okay,
My
so
motion
I'm sorry,
was that we
I'm
go
sorry.
with my motion
We're
was
on
to go-
Randy's motion. Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Go ahead,
apologize.
Commissioner Hartman.
My motion was to go with the top 5. If 1 drops out, we pick up the next 2. So if you completely remove the names, Carmen Davis and Jeff Milimick, you have a score of 2.2. So you're basing your decision on the name and not what the score was. We've all sat here, went through the entire process, scored each and every one of them, and those are the scores. But you're now basing your decision on names, perceptions, social media, and so I really think that given the scores, the way the scores turned out, if it was 2.2 and 2.3, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But since they're both tied for that 6th position, I think it's only fair that everybody get included if one drops out.
So let me tell, all right, that's a good point. Let me tell you where I was. I got 3 no ways on there, and that's what broke it for me. So if we were to vote on a city manager right now, there's no way that that person is going. Whereas with Davis, that's a possibility. She's a possibility with only 2 threes and the rest of it, yes, strong yes. You're strong yes, by the way, and other 2s are maybes. So that's why I voted that. So, anybody else? Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Preen,
No.
Commissioner Martin,
No.
Commissioner McGurk,
No.
Commissioner Hartman,
Yes.
Mayor Cleland.
No. All right. So Doug, we're clear, we're gonna go with the 5, and you're gonna let us know right away.
Wait, a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, my understanding was that if 2 dropped out, we would pick up those next 2.
Correct.
But that wasn't, I just want to restate that we're going with the 5, but should 2 of those 5 drop out, we will automatically look at Carmen and Jeff. Is
think
that
that's
what
what you told
everybody
us, right?
understands?
That's what you told us, Doug.
That's what I suggested.
Okay.
But yeah, that's, you know, so that's what I suggested so that you didn't have to reconvene, and that gives me clarity so I don't have to bring you back as a body to determine that.
Great, I just wanted to restate that that's what we are doing.
So Doug, as a point of information, are you going to share the scoring with them?
My suspicion is all your candidates are watching this meeting anyways, but
Okay.
I've certainly, yeah. But what I would do in that is certainly let those 2 candidates know that here's where we're at. You guys were close, but we're trying to keep it to 5. And if by chance we lose 2, you may very well be pulled in, and I'll know that hopefully before the weekend. Probably by the weekend, the end of the weekend, I can advise you where things stand. It may or may not be a factor to consideration. I'm just trying to avoid another meeting if we don't need it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Congratulations to Mr. Brake, Mr. Cowper, Mr. Slayton, Ms. Hayes, Mr. Moy, as being selected as finalists for the New Smyrna Beach City Manager candidate. Our next scheduled events are Friday, 7 June, and this will be an open house to the public to meet the finalists Saturday, and on June 8th, there will be a city commission, a special meeting for the city commission, and the finalists to present their visions and take questions. Maybe some wrap up from you, Doug, on how that might take place.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. So the next steps, as identified, is we will notify these candidates. We'll figure out who's all in. Those that are in the process, we're going to be asking them to complete some information and background so we can do criminal history, credit, background, database searches, legal searches, verification of their degrees, those sort of things, credentials. Also proceed with reference checks, which are a 360 evaluation, supervisors, subordinates, peers, colleagues, community members, things like that. And then we will also initiate a much more deeper, what we call a stage 2 media search, where we have folks that will be evaluating all the information is available where they've worked as an adult to be able to pull that information together, and we'll flag that in a report called a media search and flag any findings for you. So you can go as deep as you want or as high level as you want in that. We've talked before, we typically have our candidates do an additional written exercise called a first year game plan, where they will, in no more than 5 pages, identify how they'll get their arms and their head around the position if they're appointed as city manager for the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, and the balance of the first year. So it will be kind of a work plan that will provide some additional insight in their normative approach to the position. One of the things we always ask, some of our clients like to utilize DISC assessments, which is a personality. DISC stands for dominant, influence, steadiness, and conscientious. They're basically a scale. It's more of a personality approach. If that's something you want to do, we can have the candidates do that. They'll get the reports, you'll get the reports, and you also get a summary of all 4 of them. So many of our clients like to have that DISC assessment undertaken so that they can kind of see the style, and as they interview, they're evaluating whether they see the same things as what the DISC reports report. And the other piece that I wanted to get some direction on in addition to DISC is most of the time, as you know, the manager has to make a variety of public presentations, budget presentations, topics, whatever the issue is. We normally factor that into our evaluation and part of the on-site interview process. We follow kind of the TED Talk rule where you get 10 minutes and we'll help you decide what the topic would be. But it gives you a chance to see how your candidates would present a piece of information. They'd all be presenting on the same topic, and we'll talk about that shortly. And they all have basically 10 minutes or less to do it. And we normally factor that into the equation for your public interview process on the second day of the interviews. So if that's something you wanted to address, we could incorporate that. And then the other piece I need to get some feedback from you on, and Mayor, you mentioned that. I knew you and I spoke about that earlier this morning. We view that for you to find the right candidate, they've got to click with you, they've got to click with your staff and your organization and the culture of the organization, but they've also got to click with the community. It's kind of a best management practice to bring in the spouse of the partner, because if the employee that you hire loves your community and organization, but the spouse or partner doesn't, it doesn't necessarily translate into a long-term relationship. And so we often, many of our clients will have the spouse and partners come in with them, cover those costs to bring them into the community, let them participate in the community tours, the meet and greets, any of the social functions. Certainly not involved in the actual interview processes with you or with your staff, but they at least get a chance to experience the community as they evaluate them. This is a two-way process. They're evaluating you as much as you're evaluating the candidates. So we try to recommend that, but that's certainly a call that you have to make from a policy standpoint. So let me stop there and just make sure you're comfortable with first-year game plans. And then I certainly want to have an assessment of DISC assessments and the assessment presentation and the spouse or partner invites.
Okay, let's take those one at a time. Is there interest in having the DISC assessments?
Are these
additional
additional costs? Or?
Yeah, Doug, is this in the rate, or we pay extra for this?
Those are extra. And I think they're $150 or something of that nature. They're in that ballpark, Mayor. I apologize, I don't have the exact number, but they were in the proposal as a supplemental service. It's an optional fee.
Any thoughts?
I don't know.
Got one no.
I
Commissioner
would
Martin.
take any tool we can get.
Okay, there's a plus.
There's pluses and minuses with those. 150 times, or if we have 4 or 5. I'm flexible.
Okay, Commissioner Hartman.
I agree with Commissioner Martin. Any additional information will help. My question, though, is with the background references check in the stage 2 media searches, when will we get that information?
So the next piece, and I'll walk through the schedule, Randy, but the next piece will be you'll get, like you did before, you'll have a briefing book that'll be an electronic link to them. It won't have the video interviews, but you'll have a briefing book that will include their cover letters, resumes, questionnaire responses, their first year game plan. And at that same point, we would also have links to each of their media search information. References often take a little bit longer during this window, but we would try to have those completed at least at the commencement of your interview process so that you have all that material before you do interviews. But we sometimes don't have that available at the same time as the rest of the materials there. But it certainly would be done in time for you to evaluate the references while you're interviewing your candidate. So you would have some background, but it's normally not at the same date that you'll get the balance of the material in preparation for the interviews.
So will we get the information before June the 7th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'll have a schedule here. It's just oftentimes the references are not available at the same time as the other material is, but they would be in advance of your interviews. Absolutely. Yep,
That's
absolutely.
good. I'm glad he asked that, and I'm glad the answer is yes, we'll have it ahead of being able to select him. That makes total sense. I like the idea of the first-year game plan. Anybody object to that?
I like it.
Yeah, and then I think we've got at least 3 of us that like the DISC assessment, so I think that's a yes.
Okay.
And how about the presentation exercise? I like that idea. That's the 10 minutes to tell us something.
Yeah, I like that.
Anybody oppose that? All right, that's good. How about spouses and partners? Anybody for or against that?
I'm against it.
You're against it?
Frankly, it reminds me of my early married days when I was interviewed along with my husband. So, no.
Anybody else?
I don't have I don't need to interview the spouse. Is that what that was?
Yes.
Spouse?
Yes. Any other views? I support it because of the longevity of the partnership with the city. If there's a cranky other half to the couple,
But they're going to pull out. And how many spouses are going to? I mean, do we expect a spouse to look at us and say, "I don't like this place. I want you to pick my husband"?
yeah,
or
I direct you
my
to the
wife?"
back of the room. Never.
Yeah, I have to say that it was truly distressing for me. Oh, it absolutely was. You're hiring my husband, you're not hiring me. And that to me was a very strong sentiment. If the wife wants to come, and I have no problem with the spouse coming and saying, because what they do when they go home and she says, I hate that town or I love that town, that's private, that's between them. But to trot her out with a big name tag, been there, done that, and I think it's humiliating.
If I may offer a suggestion.
Assistant City Manager has something.
Other than involving them as part of getting their opinion, to give them a feel of the community, I've seen in the past where they've taken the spouses and partners as a group and entertained them and took them around the community just to give them a flavor of the community. That's an option for you.
I need to say something on this. This is
Say some
crazy.
more.
I have flown all over the United States interviewing for positions. I've never, ever heard of flying your spouse with them. We're interviewing the person, not the spouse. Those days are long gone.
Let me get some
Especially
clarity.
with expenses. We don't do that anymore.
Let me get some clarity. What are we doing with the spouse?
Doug, have you got an idea of how you've
Yeah,
done this
I
before?
mean, what's the spouse
What are the
comes?
options?
What do they do?
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, it's certainly an optional issue. Many of our communities do it. I will tell you, if you follow the ICMA, the International Code, City County Management Association, they consider it a best practice. The candidate's spouse or partner is not involved in the interviews, but they are getting a chance to at least see the community and understand it. In many cases, if they've got kids or something, they are often involved meeting with a school superintendent or a school effort to get it. They're looking at schools, they're looking at neighborhoods. We normally invite the spouses or partners to participate in the community tour, which are typically one-on-one issues, they're not public. In many of our communities, the spouses or partners are invited to attend any of the meet and greets, the public meet and greets. I will tell you as a candidate, all the interviews I ever had as city manager, that was a standard process. I rely a lot on my spouse. I would never take a position that my community didn't feel or that my partner didn't feel was right for us or our family. And it's hard to convey that. But every community does this differently. But I will tell you, it's in this business, it's recognized as the best management practice. But I'm sensitive to the issues you've raised. So we try to carve it out so they don't feel like they're on display per se. And we can either make them part of meet and greets or not make them part of meet and greets. But the concept of allowing a partner or a spouse to see your community and make a decision about whether this is the right spot for their family is something that is hard to convey unless the spouse or partner's kind of seen it and gotten a chance to interact in some fashion. That's
Yeah, and Doug, we're not mandating this. I'm providing it as an option. Did I understand that right?
That's
It's not
correct.
man. You
That's
must
correct.
bring your spouse. If you'd like to, that's something that we would take care of.
So let me clarify.
That is-
I was under the impression that someone said we're going to interview the spouses.
No. no,
So
that's,
what Doug just described is what I've seen done in almost every hire that we've done. So I'm all for that. The spouse comes, checks out the community, looks around with the spouse that we're interviewing. That's, I think, very important, assuming that the spouse wants to participate in that. So I'm good with that.
Is there more discussion?
Yes,
Yeah, go ahead.
please.
Yes, ma'am.
We always did that with like the final 2 candidates, not 5, because that's expensive. I mean, if you're paying for a flight from Montana to here and paying for their spouses and their meals and whatever you're paying for, that's for the final 2, not for 5, 10 people. That's just more than our budget can afford when we are 10 million short.
Commissioner Martin.
I agree. First of all, under all conditions, that the spouse not feel that he or she is on display. Frankly, my routine, I felt like, where's my check? If you're also hiring me, I want a check with my name on it, right? But that's a lot of candidates to be bringing in the full caboose. I think it's fair to say, if we down to a final 2, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Let the families have a
All right.
say.
We're divided, so let's do this like we do everything. Can I have a,
But now I'm confused because on day 2, we're interviewing all 5 or 4 or 6, and then it says discuss terms and conditions of employment offer. So there will not be a narrow it down to the final 2. We will have to decide between the 5, 4, or 6,
right.
correct?
That's right. So let's have a motion, please, one way or the other, and usually done in the affirmative.
Motion to allow spouses to be part of the interview process, or to be, not interview, invite the spouses to come to the city and pay for the spouses to come along with their spouse.
Motion is to allow the spouses to come and attend at their discretion. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second. Any more discussion? Madam City Clerk, call the roll.
Vice Mayor Brune,
No.
Commissioner Martin,
No.
Commissioner Hartman,
Yes.
Commissioner McGirt,
Yes.
Mayor Cleveland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. It's, so Doug, don't laugh at us. We can get tripped over a variety of things here.
that's all right.
All right.
You know, not my first rodeo. I realize
All
that everybody has, I just need direction, so wherever you land, we'll figure it out. I'm trying to make this as painless
All
as
right.
possible, but I
Any
realize different
questions
opinions.
on day 1, which is June 7, or day 2, June 8th, from anybody? Okay.
Let me kind of walk you through a draft schedule. I articulated in the other effort, but you'll kind of see how the wheel would work. So what we typically do is have any of your folks that would not be driving in, they're non-local folks, they would come in, try to get them in the day before, because the first day, which is scheduled on June 7th, is a full day that starts first thing in the morning. So I don't have a candidate that's flying in, they get delayed or something of that nature. So we like to get them in town the night before. So what we've got set up is a series. I just made an assumption we have 5 candidates. We'll sort this all out if that changes in some fashion. But for the purposes of tonight's effort, what we've got is scheduled for 30-minute kind of round robin one-on-one interviews. So each candidate gets with each of you, and you can ask them questions, and we'll help you provide proposed questions for this session, as well as your group interviews that you might want to address. But those will be one-on-one, and we'll just knock on the door 5 minutes before they're done, and we'll rotate around that effort. So that'll take place in the morning. When we get to at the end of that period, after we rotate through that process, we can either work out a group lunch where you can continue to have the ability to kind of mingle with candidates. You're in the non-legislative mode in that effort, or we can also have the candidates and their spouses, in this case, have lunch on their own. We can work through that. I don't really need direction on that from you tonight. We can work through your staff on that one. But basically, that first morning from 8 o'clock till about 10:45, 11 o'clock in that window, we'll need all of your undivided attention to work through that, and we'll just put you in different rooms there in the City Hall complexes. The second part of that day then involves community tours, and we'll work with your staff to figure out what that looks like in terms of the tours. And we've got them juggling, and some will be doing tours in the morning or the first part of the afternoon. Some will be doing later in the afternoon. And then we juggle sessions with each of your candidates with your senior staff. And I'll have a panel book for them that'll have proposed questions, and I'll sit in with them as well and facilitate that. That gives me a chance, and your staff and your candidates. The candidates want to meet the staff, your staff want to meet the candidates. They're not going to be making selections. All I'm looking for at the end of that is how did the candidates do with you? What did you see in their interactions that resonated with you? Any concerns you've got? And I'll capture that at a high level, as well as feedback from any of the tours and reactions that they have. So I can provide that to you on the next day. Then I know we're doing this this meet and greet, and we have that, I believe, Heather's arranged for that from 6:30 to 8. I don't have the location yet, but I think that's in one of your community, your center that's across from City Hall there in the downtown area. Normally what happens on that, once the crowd is assembled, Mayor, you welcome people there, turn it over to me. I'll kind of explain how we got to this point. We'll work with your staff to have handouts with pictures and short bios. And I normally have each of the candidates just do a very short 2-minute, here's who I am and here's my background and why I'm interested in the position. We allow the candidates to spread out in different parts of that room, and your crowd will just kind of work around organically. We encourage you to be at that meet and greet as an elected official, because your constituents will reach out and want to talk to you about their thoughts and impressions. So we'd like you to be present, and you can also witness kind of how your community and your candidates are interacting with each other as well. So that's a long day, that first day. They're not done till 8 o'clock. And then the second day is where we have scheduled the public interviews that you've referenced, Mayor, there at City Hall or in your commission chambers. We normally schedule those for 90 minutes. We find that 1 hour is too short. Every time I schedule an hour, everybody wants more than that, and 2 hours is too long. 90 minutes seems to be right. What that provides is about 60 minutes for a traditional interview process with all of you. 10 minutes for the PowerPoint presentation that we spoke of earlier, and then the balance of time is for Q&A, back and forth, the questions Canada has for you and reactions and follow-up questions you have. And we find that 90-minute window, you'll find it goes pretty quickly, but obviously it's a full day with 5 candidates to go through it. So we got some breaks in there and lunches. And then if desired, you can adjourn at the end and have a quick dinner break if need be, and then reconvene and discuss, or you can go directly into your discussion on your candidates. But in response to Randy's question, yes, the goal here is typically you complete your interviews in these 2 days and you've selected your candidate, and then we're off to the races in terms of negotiations. I have only had in a couple hundred searches, 1 or 2, where we've decided there was a kind of a logjam, and we've asked the candidate, 2 candidates to come back with something else or some additional information. But 99% of our searches land on, at the end of day 2 with a selection of a preferred candidate, with maybe 1 in the wings if something falls apart.
Really good. We've got a slew of questions, so let's get at that and probably start back on day 1. Anybody?
Quick question. Doug, what's the PowerPoint presentation you discussed?
So this gets back to this. It's we've done this in a couple ways, and we didn't really land on this one. I think there was a desire to do it. We often will have the candidates do a PowerPoint presentation. It can be on their first-year game plan. Another topic I often do is tell us the challenges and opportunities you see in this position, which may have elements of the first-year game plan, but they'll kind of talk about where they think the priorities of their efforts are going to be focused on, or what they're going to be, really be challenged to address. So in response to your question, Jason, it can be on any topic, but oftentimes it's about a first-year game plan or challenges and opportunities. If there's a different topic you'd like, we can do that. The one challenge we have is we have to give them some material to do their homework on, and that gets to be a little more problematic as they're preparing for interviews and doing the research on the community, and then having an assignment that they can't relatively do on their own, so to speak.
So I like the idea of them coming up and publicly speaking. A lot of important reasons for that. The PowerPoint presentation worries me a little bit, simply because that can simply be a crutch, and it can just be long and drawn out. So I like the public speaking part. The PowerPoint presentation doesn't excite me too much, but that's just my personal feeling on that.
With regards to the timing on that, Jason, what I'll tell you is I'm very clear that we say this is this is a timed presentation. It's supposed to be no more than 10 minutes. It could be less than that. And in order to make that work, you as elected body will not be asking questions during that period, so it doesn't throw off the timing. And I remind them multiple times, this is 10 minutes. If I see a candidate that brings in 30 pages, I'm telling him right off the bat, you're not going to go through 30 pages in 10 minutes or less. So I really drive that point home, because it's hard to do a short presentation.
Very good. Commissioner Martin.
I would only note that in our city government, we do a lot of presentations. And I would kind of like to see what a potential city manager would do for a presentation, because that manager either will be making presentations or will be reviewing staff presentations. So I'd like to see that exercise.
Any other comments?
So that's something they would prepare before they get here then, right?
Yes. So normally what I do is I have them prepare their first year game plan in time that material is included with the briefing book material that I spoke of earlier. I normally, because they've got a lot of work to do here to get ready and they're doing research, I normally give them to the first day, at the beginning of the interview process. So on that first day, they then either have emailed me ahead of time, or by that day, they hand me their PowerPoint on a data stick. That gives me a chance to make sure everything looks right and they can, realistically get through it. And then I work with your IT department to get it loaded on your systems to make sure everything's good for the second day of the interview. So we don't normally have the PowerPoint with the briefing books, but we do have it on the first day so that it's ready to go for day 2.
Thank you.
I like seeing the PowerPoint because we can actually see how much attention to detail and how their finance comes out. Because if it's really a good person that dives into that, it's going to be clear.
And the topic of the PowerPoint is their 100-day plan?
But that I can. Most of my clients
they
either
want?
do it on the. It can either be on challenges and opportunities or the first year game plan. I'm open to either one. If you have a preference, I can do one or the other.
I'd like them not to talk about that. I'd like to see what they come up with. You want to see if they can throw a fastball. And if they can knock it out with a PowerPoint, awesome, because as Commissioner Martin said, we do a lot of them around here, and we're going to be presenting upline to state and county officials to get grants and what have you, so I want to be able to see if they got a fastball. And if it's an average PowerPoint, then that's a scoring criteria, an item in my book.
Absolutely.
So
okay.
I don't think you got any pushback on that. Randy just wanted to make sure, and Jason, to make sure that what the purpose was, and that it wasn't going to be one that drones on and on.
Yeah, I've yet to have to gong an employee or a candidate going through it, and that's the point I emphasize. I hear you loud and clear, Jason. I appreciate what you're raising.
Any other questions on either day 1 or day 2? I've got one that may be controversial. Put day 1 up there, please.
First part or the second part of it? Yeah, the one-on-ones or the other pieces?
Yeah, on the first part of day 1. Okay, very good. I like the break in the middle and the social aspects of having a meal together are very telling, and so I like the fact that we're going to have something where it's a little more relaxed, but they know that they're still being observed, and so I think that's helpful. If you go to the second half of the day, my challenge is I would like their feedback. I'd like to know their feedback on my one-on-one interview of their assessment of the senior staff. And if they get to meet the senior staff in the second part of the day, I don't have a chance to ask them those. I don't have a chance to ask them those questions. Is there any way to move that around so they can have their interviews and conversations with the senior staff before we get to meet them?
Yes, I've done it both ways, and I'll defer whichever way makes most sense for you. At the end of that first day, by the time we're done, I normally am typing up my notes and trying to get them back to ready to go and email them to all of you so you have it that night. But that's a late night because I don't get started until 8 o'clock. But I've certainly done what you suggested, Mayor, in some of my searches and flipped things around. That just means that you as elected officials are at the end of the day, or midday and towards the end, I can can flip that schedule around if you'd prefer that to be the case.
It's just another indicator of their assessment of our team. I've got one head nodding anyway, and without objection, I think it tells us a whole lot more about their assessment on just one interview, one small session, but at least it's a data point, and give them, it's a little bit of how of observing their analytical ability, and that's why I wanted to have that, and that we could ask them their assessments, if you choose to ask them in the privacy of your one-on-one. I plan to.
I would think that it would be a better communication with each candidate for them to have a better feel of what they're potentially getting into. And by meeting with staff first and then with us, I think they can ask us better questions and we can get a better feel for them.
Without objection?
Yeah, I'm not opposed.
All right, great. Swap it, Doug.
Okay, we can make that accommodation without a problem.
We don't have to
Okay.
get up so early.
That's right.
All right,
Can
then-
I see day two? I think, I don't have anything really on day two. Anybody? Okay. And then walk us through the deliberation. Is the deliberation that day? Or is it another day?
Yeah, I describe this sometimes as like the cardinal selecting a pope. We don't know if there's blue smoke, black smoke, white smoke, or whatever at the end. So as the process unfolds, you'll have met them individually, you'll have gotten feedback, you've seen them in the public meet and greets, you've seen their PowerPoint presentation, you've interviewed them as a group. We often will. Many of our searches, there'll be a kind of a consensus that maybe there's one or two or three candidates that kind of rise to the top. And so many times before ranking into a scoring process or a voting process, after we finish that, we'll say, all right, are there, now you've met these candidates, are there any candidates each one of you would like to advance as, a candidate you want to maybe really talk about as being the manager? And that may result in 1, 2, or 3 folks typically. And then if we do that, then we normally have a conversation about those 3, about 2 or 3, wherever you land, about strengths or weaknesses or concerns. And I'll help you facilitate that conversation as part of those discussions. And then after you've heard each other all about that, then the question is, okay, let's do a rank. Who is your candidate that you'd like to proceed with? 99% of the time you land on one candidate with a close second. And if that's the case, then we, commence negotiations shortly thereafter, not necessarily that day or that night, because it's a long day. But I'll work with you to, most of the time, there's either a mayor or someone is appointed from the commission to help in the negotiation process. And I will work with whoever that process and your attorney to work out a term sheet and develop something and then help you get through the negotiation. So we don't normally negotiate that night, but the process of selecting your candidate, we try to land a plane on that. And then I meet with whoever the next person, whoever the commission candidate or representative is, and whoever other staff you've got to help you work through the negotiations.
Right. That's helpful. Is there any wisdom? They fly in the day before day one, right?
For any of the candidates that are non-local, we bring them in the day before so that they don't have a travel logistics problem, and then we get, a candidate gets delayed for whatever reason and everything kind of goes kiltered. Normally, the piece that I've mentioned is on the bottom of that. Normally, we release the candidates after they're done with their interviews with the commission. So if they want to scoot that day or that night, if that's available, if they're, if you're the last one, may or may not be able to leave, depending on, we'll try to put local candidates last. So you can, if somebody's flying in, they can fly back home that day and not have an extra night there in town. And normally what will happen is after the decision's been made and your candidate, then I'll work with whoever the representatives that you would like to put together term sheets and then have you be ready to go and help you negotiate. But that's normally done, not on site, normally done, several days later.
Got it.
Since this will be on a weekend. Yeah.
And back to what Mr. Nybert said, is there any planned city formal tour, or is that something that is optional, or we should arrange it, or they're on their own? What have you seen, Ron, previously?
My experience is there was an organized tour for the group of the spouses who wanted to go. They took them as a group.
Got it.
And they took them to some key locations in the community of might be interest for them.
Any wisdom of doing that before the day one exercise? In other words, on the day they fly in?
It depends on how you want to, if I understand the question, Mayor. Oftentimes, what we've done, and it's not really been a problem, and it's not really part of the interview process, but what we try to do, I like to have the city tours be done individually as opposed to in a group. I just think you get into more dialogue with the candidates and their spouses and in the interest. Some cases, there may be things that the spouse of the partner wants to learn that would be different than the different candidate. And so, we like to do those individually if at all possible. And that way you're kind of spending time and the candidate and their spouse or partner and, see the community at the same time, so to speak, and hear the same pieces of information than putting kind of all the spouses or partners on a bus and doing it differently. That's been my experience. I think it's worked out well. We get good feedback from we always survey all our candidates or our finalists. We always get good feedback on the way that process has worked, if that gives you any insight.
Awesome.
The Chamber of Commerce comes in handy for those types of things.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you. What else? Anything else from you, Doug?
No, that's all I've got. My
you.
last question. This is just the timetable here to let you know. We're at this meeting now. We would anticipate getting materials to you at the end of the month. And then that gives you some time to prepare for the interviews on the 7th and the 8th accordingly. So the schedule is the same schedule that we've shown in previous slides.
Wonderful. Any questions?
I think we'd all like to get tonight's presentation emailed to us.
Sure, I will get that to.
So we can have this for our review. Thanks.
Yep, I'll shoot that to Heather and she can distribute it accordingly. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments here? Okay, thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. We're adjourned.
Great. Thank you much, folks.
See you
Good
later.
night.
Thank you.